That night that Jesus was arrested, everything fell apart. When the crowd of the police officers and others came around, they surrounded Jesus, and he stood there. The disciples were terrified. One of them, and we don't know who and we don't know why, pulled out a sword. They were going to defend Jesus, forming a circle around him. And Jesus seemed pretty calm about it. But when that sword came out, Jesus said, no, none of that. Put that away. He told the disciple to put the sword down. And then he turned to the soldiers and said, you could have arrested me any day this week. You could have come to me any time. But you're doing it here at night, because this is the hour when evil deeds are done. And Jesus said that, and suddenly the disciples took off in every direction. They went running as fast as they could away from that spot. And Jesus didn't go after them, and he didn't call them back to him. He just let them run. Now you've got to give Peter and John a little bit of credit, because we are told that at least when they finally realized nobody was chasing them, they stopped running and they turned back to see what had happened, hiding in the shadows, staying out of the light of the torches that the soldiers were carrying. They followed right up to the house of the leader of the council, where they took Jesus for trial, his hands tied behind his back, dragging him along the street. They didn't know what to do when they took Jesus into the house. Should they stay silent and hidden? Or should they go in and give their testimony and say, this Jesus is an innocent man? As I picture it, I think Peter was just about to do that, just about to go up to that house and go in and say, this man is innocent, to give his own testimony. But just as he was about to do that, a girl came up to Jesus. Just a little girl, half the size of that big fisherman, and said to him, hey, I know who you are. You're one of those people that were with Jesus. And Peter looked at her and said, no, you're mistaken. It wasn't me. And he turned around away from the house and sat back down by the fire. And twice more it happened. And the third time when it happened, a man said to him, I know it's you. I saw you talking to him. Besides, you have the same accent as Jesus. You're both from the north. We can tell. And Peter said, I am not. And he swore and he said, I am not that person. I don't even know that man. And as he said that, the Gospel of Luke tells us, Jesus, passing by a window in the house, turned and looked at him. Their eyes met. That look of Jesus, a terrible look of pity to him. And Peter remembered at that moment how he had just that same night boasted that he would never desert Jesus, that he would die with him if it came to that. And now here he is saying he doesn't even know who Jesus is. Jesus looks at Peter, the rooster crows, and Peter bursts into tears, and he runs off again into the night. And who knows what he was thinking? But let me ask you this. Was there mercy for Peter? Could he be forgiven? Could his broken heart be healed? Could his ruined soul be restored? Is there mercy still for someone like Peter? And what happened to Judas? Where has he gone now that Jesus has been arrested? He was one of the followers of Jesus. He was one of the Jesus gang. He traveled with Jesus. He listened to him. He worked with him for years. He was a valuable helper, but something had gone wrong. Was it greed? Did he just want the money? Was that all it was? Or was it jealousy? Did he want to be the chosen one? Whatever it was that happened to him, it was powerful. And he eventually went to the authorities and said, I'll help you catch him. I'll help you with that. I'll tell you where you can get him when nobody else is around. I know where he's going. I'll help you with that. And you'll just pay me. To make sure they arrested the right man when it came that time, Judas walked up to Jesus there in the darkness there, followed by that crowd of soldiers and others, and he walked up to Jesus and kissed him. That's the one. That was the signal. Judas's embrace. And then what happened? Did Judas just stand back smugly as Jesus was arrested, hiding in with the soldiers as the other disciples said, Judas, what have you done? Judas, I'll kill you. Is that what happened then? Or was he shocked when he saw the brutality of the arrest, the way the soldiers took Jesus and tied him and dragged him, did that bother him? Did he begin to think he had done something wrong? Did he tell himself that he had only done what had to be done? Or did he just finger that little bag of money that was hanging from his belt and start thinking about how he was going to use it? But later on, when the whole thing had all played out, did Judas realize what he had done? Did he see the tortures that Jesus was suffering and realize that it was his own fault that it happened? Did he run to the temple and pray for forgiveness for what he had done? We don't know. The Bible is very unclear about what happens to Judas after all of this. So what did happen to him? Was there mercy? Did he find any hope of forgiveness? Is he sitting frozen at the center of hell like Dante wrote? Or was there mercy? Is there mercy still for someone like Judas? Can he be forgiven? And what happened to the criminal who was on the cross, crucified at the same time as Jesus was? What had he done to be put on this cross? Some Bible versions refer to him as a thief, but it couldn't have simply been theft. That wouldn't have led to this kind of a punishment. Very likely, he was involved in some kind of rebellion against the authorities, some kind of violence. Maybe he was a terrorist. Whatever he was not an innocent man. And he admits that he deserved the fate that he had gotten. And was there mercy for him? Had he pled for his life? Had he begged for forgiveness when he was put on trial? Had he offered to make restitution? Had he done anything like that? Whatever it was, there was no mercy for him. His sentence was death by crucifixion. And the Bible tells us that there were many people who came to watch this crucifixion. Perhaps some came to see one of the others that had been crucified there. Maybe others came to see Jesus. Many of these people looked up at Jesus and added to his suffering by insulting him and mocking him with his own words. In fact, one of the two others that were hanging there with Jesus did the same thing. While he himself was on the cross, began to make fun of Jesus and curse at him and swear at him and ridicule him. And then the one that spoke finally said, "What are you doing? We're here because we deserve it, but this man is an innocent man." And finally he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." Would he find mercy now? As he spoke to Jesus, would there be mercy for him? There was. Here at last, at the cross, there was mercy. And Jesus looked at him and said, "Today, you'll be with me in paradise." And what of those others that were there at that crucifixion? The crowd that came out to watch Jesus suffer and die, to mock and ridicule them for having been caught. This crowd that called for blood and cheered while the nails were being pounded in, what happened to them? This crowd that had no mercy for the suffering of these people, what happened to them? The crowd that laughed as they cried out in agony. The crowd that might have been silenced when Jesus said, "God, forgive them. They don't realize what they're doing." Or maybe they laughed at that too. And if we were there, what would we have said? And would we have been merciful? We human beings, we certainly find a way to take pleasure in the suffering of others. We love to see people get what's coming to them, don't we? We love it when that bragging sports champion who always dances obnoxiously in the end zone, don't we love it when he finally gets knocked down and knocked out and hauled off of the game? Don't we love it when that politician who has lied to us finally gets put on the spot on a TV show by a news person, or that celebrity that gets found in a compromising position? Don't we love that? Don't we love it when that beautiful woman's picture is taken when she doesn't look beautiful? Don't we love it when other people suffer? So what would we have been like? Would we have had mercy, or would we have been there in that crowd, unmercifully laughing as Jesus' life is drained away? The Bible tells us that when this was all over, something changed. And those people who had been calling for him to die now suddenly realized what they had done. And they go home, beating their breasts, it says, beating themselves for what they had done. And what about us today? We are among billions of people who claim to be followers of Jesus. What would we have done? Would we have formed a circle around Jesus to defend him, or would we have run off into the night? We all know ourselves. We all know that we are quite capable of betraying or denying someone else. There isn't one person in this room who hasn't taken pleasure in the misery of others. There isn't one person in this room who hasn't turned away and tried not to see the suffering of others. There isn't one person here today who doesn't know what it's like to mock or ridicule someone else. There isn't one person here today who isn't living in a world full of prejudice and injustice. And there isn't one of us who haven't decided at many points in our life that what we want is more important than what God wants. And is there mercy for us? Do we face the judge who would condemn us to death? Or is there mercy still? Has God turned away from us? Or is there mercy for us? There is. There's divine mercy. And we are forgiven. And that is what makes Holy Week holy. Where once there was only failure and betrayal and cruelty, beyond all that, behind the curtain yet to be seen, there's mercy still for all of us.
You've been listening to a sermon by Reverend Stephen Carnahan, pastor of High Street Congregational Church in Auburn, Maine. If you feel inspired by what you hear, we invite you to join us in person for worship services every Sunday morning, beginning at 10 o'clock. Of course, you can always listen to Steve's sermons on the web. New sermons are posted every Monday by midday. Please take a moment to explore this website for more information about our church, or visit our Facebook page at High Street Congregational Church, UCC. We hope that God's presence will be known to you every hour of every day, and that God's blessings will rest upon you now and always. See you next week.